Welcome everyone to our fourth webinar in our series for DoD STEM opportunities for the AEOP Apprenticeship Programs. We are thrilled to have you here, and for today's speakers, we have Dr. Santiago Orrego and Dr. Emily Reinke, who I'm not going to do much introduction of them because they are going to introduce themselves and tell you more about their backgrounds and experience today. Just a few tips as we work through the webinar. If you have a question, please use the chat box. I will be moderating those questions and combining some if some are related to each other, and ask away. So who we have on the call today, we have apprentices, we have high school students who are in our high school apprenticeship programs, REAP, HSAP, and CAP. And hopefully by now you all know what these acronyms are. REAP and HSAP students are at university-based laboratories, and CAP students are at Army facilities. We also have some undergraduates with us today in our URAP program. Those folks are based at universities as well, often working side by side with our HSAP apprentices. And then the College Qualified Leaders, CQL, doesn't just stand for web coding. It also stands for College Qualified Leaders, and those are undergraduates at Army facilities as well. Welcome, everybody. Wanted to just give you a quick overview if you're new to the webinar series, that this is really an opportunity for all of you. Our speakers have agreed to talk to you. They'd love to hear what you're thinking, what your questions are. They're going to share their background and experience, some of which has been involved with other Army educational outreach programs or Department of Defense programs. So please ask as many questions as you would like. If we run out of time, I'm sure they'll be happy to answer them as in a follow-up email that we'll send to all of you. We hope that you'll learn about the fields that they're working in. These may not be fields that you're familiar with, or maybe new fields to you, and could hold opportunities for new classes or maybe even a career. So this session really is for you, and we hope you get a lot out of it. And with that, I am going to hand things over to Dr. Santiago Orrego, who is an associate professor and mechanical engineer at Temple University, and actually has been a host of apprenticeship programs in the past too.
That's right, Sarah. Good morning for the people in the West Coast. Good afternoon for the people in the East Coast. I'm pretty excited to be here with you today. My name is Santiago Orrego. Yes, as Sarah said, I'm here currently a faculty at Temple University. And I'll be talking today about my career path, what happened in my life since the time I graduated high school until the time, during my time at the PhD, and then currently my position at Temple University. I'm also going to talk a little bit about my research, and I'm going to show you guys what I do in a day-to-day basis, and I want to share with you a little bit of wisdom. So I'm currently, right now I'm currently in Philadelphia. So Temple is a public university in Philadelphia. It's inside the city. We're very close to UPenn and Drexel. It's a big university. We have like 35,000 students, and we have many different programs. I did my postdoc, and I'm gonna go to talk to you about that at Johns Hopkins University. Johns Hopkins, you might know, is very big in medicine and cancer research, and is in Baltimore. So actually my moving was pretty easy. It was just 2-hour drive, and it was pretty convenient. So let me tell you a little bit about me, if we can move forward. Yep. So I hold a PhD in mechanical engineering. And for those of you that don't know what is a PhD is a doctor in philosophy, which is kind of funny because I'm not really a philosopher, but that's the degree. That's the highest degree someone can reach. And just to teach you a little bit about that, philosophy means that it's a combination of love of wisdom. Philosoph comes from the Latin word love, and Sophia is wisdom. So PhD means love of wisdom, and doctor means a learned person. And I also hold a master's in mechanical engineering. So just for those of you to get a scope, how my career has been like after I graduated high school in 2000, I had 5 years of bachelor's in mechanical engineering. So I studied for 5 years hard. Then after that, I decided I wanted to go to get a second degree, an advanced degree, and then I joined a master's program in mechanical engineering. I learned a lot about turbines, a lot about research, and I really engaged and fell in love with academia life. I really enjoy like hanging out with professors, learning new things every day, interacting with students, and so on and so forth. And after that, I decided myself that if I wanted to remain in the field, the only way for me to do that is obtain a PhD, right? The minimum requirement for a person to become a professor is have a PhD. So because of that, I decided, yep, let's go all in with research science and let's go and get a PhD degree, which took me 5 years. So I had I went to Maryland, to University of Maryland, and I work in biomaterials and bioengineering. I will tell you a little bit about that in the next slides. So after I graduated from my PhD in Maryland, I went to Hopkins and I did 3 years of postdoctoral experience. And a postdoctoral experience is not necessarily a degree, but it's a transition period that goes after you graduate from a PhD program to become a faculty. It's this transition place that you are really a scientist, you do research, but this is the space for you to polish your academic tasks. So you have to teach, you have to be TA, you have to do research, you have to write grants and so on and so forth, but in some kind of preparation period. And I did that at Hopkins. And actually recently, not 3 months ago, I was very fortunate to have this opportunity to become a faculty at Temple. And I'm teaching dental students and bioengineering students materials classes. More about me, right? I'm talking all professional life. I love to run, so I'm a vivid runner. I have run half marathons, full marathons. I really like to do that. I also like to play music, so I have a small studio in my house, as you can see up there in the picture. And I actually have a SoundCloud profile if you guys want to go and check it out. And another hobby I like to do is scuba diving. So you can see me and my beautiful girlfriend in Florida. That actually was back in April. During a spring break, we went for a weekend there, and we had great time diving there. We saw a couple of sharks and turtles, and it was a great time. So not only we have a professional life, but we also have a personal life that is very important to keep the balance and actually to be able to feed all the ideas and the wisdom in a way. Yeah, let's keep moving. So what I do in research, if we can go about research, and I'm going to talk about 2 projects I have been involved in. I'm pretty sure you guys are going to enjoy these 2 topics. So we need energy, right? So we are constantly in the quest for energy. You have to go every night to charge your cell phone, right? To charge your computer. You need lights, and so energy, right? Is a big deal. So one of the things we work at Hopkins was to find new ways to harvest wind energy. So when you have wind currents, those wind currents were able to make a flap and oscillate back and forth. And because of that flapping, we were able to harvest and extract energy from the wind and convert that into electrical energy. And with that energy, we were able to power sensors like temperature sensors, humidity sensors, and so on and so forth. So the sensor didn't require any connection to any grid, but the flag by itself was able to power the sensors. So sorry, if you can please put the YouTube video. I want to show you guys what we had to do to prove this concept. So yeah, the first one. Yep. So we actually had to build a small wind tunnel. So we actually collaborated with a bunch of different undergrad students, and with their nice help, we went to the machine shop and just fabricated this small wind tunnel. So actually, the wind tunnel was driven by computer fans, as you can see in the back of the video. We had to put like 4 computer fans back there, and the air was being sucked into the wind tunnel. And the things you see in the middle is the flag that is flapping, right? So the trick, how can you generate? You might be wondering, how do you generate these electrical signals just by having the flag? And the trick is done by the material. The material we're using right now is a piezoelectric material. Piezoelectric materials are those that when you put pressure or stress to them, they produce charges or electricity. So the trick here was for the flag to keep a constant oscillation. And we obtained that by providing the exact dimensions. And you can see how nicely this flag can oscillate or flap back and forth just by wind forces. So it was a pretty interesting project. Now, if we go and check the second video, we had to, as a scientist, we need to understand what is happening. So we had to use high-speed cameras, and this is a top view. So we're looking the flag from the top side. And you can see that in the middle of the video, the flag is oscillating back and forth. So we had to use a very, very fast camera. It's like probably 10 times or 1,000 times faster than the cameras we have in the cell phone. And you can see that when the flag is coming up and down, there is a vortex that is formed at the surface. And because of those vortices, that's actually the mechanism that drives the flag to oscillate back and forth. So we had to kind of, take the videos, record, and explain why this flag was oscillating and how much energy we were able to harvest to power the sensors. I think that's enough, and we can go back to the presentation. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so as you can see, guys, in the bottom left part of the slide, we created this weather station. So it was very, very funny because we put and placed this flag in the building in Hopkins, right above the president's office. So you can imagine the president looking at the building and seeing that flapping flag above him. So it was pretty interesting because we showed that we were able to power sensors just by placing that weather station on the rooftop of the building. So we in this project, we involved, me, I was kind of the leading scientist. We involved graduate students, people doing PhDs and masters, and actually undergrads. We had undergrads just doing Arduino programming to control the wind tunnel fans, for example. So, a vast of students from different levels were involved and were essential to finalize this project. Now, I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to talk about my current work and my PhD work, and that this is regarding dental materials, right? So in the upper left part of the slide, we can see tooth. It has been sectioned, right? It's cut in half. And a tooth has actually several tissues, and the two most important tissues are enamel, which is the outermost tissue of the tooth, and then we have dentin, which is like the foundation, is the big chunk of your tooth. So dentin, from the material science perspective, is a very, very interesting material because you can see a picture. If you cut a small section of this dentin and look at it in the microscope, this is what you see. It's a tissue that has a bunch of pipes or tubules that span from the interior to the exterior. And those tubules, they have actually fluid, and the fluid is moving constantly back and forth. And the composition and the way this tissue is arranged is fascinating. And I'm going to try to put an analogy how this material works. So we call this material a composite material. A composite material is materials that is not only one homogeneous material, but has several different materials. So I put a schematic in like a pizza, right? When you eat a pizza, you have the crust. The crust is a single material, just one crust. But when you begin to add the tomato, the cheese, pineapple, whatever you want to use, you begin to add different materials. So composite materials are like that. It's just a material that has several different materials. And because when you add those different materials, they behave differently. So it's like when you eat the crust, you taste it in a way, but if you eat the pizza with all the ingredients, they taste differently. So from the materials standpoint, dentin is exactly like that. It's arranged with these different phases: mineral, collagen, fluids, and all of them are very important for the overall response of the materials. So what we tried to do and address from the science and the research perspective was to make dental materials that interacted with the cavity, with the biofilm, with the oral environment. We know we drink orange juice, we drink wine, and those drinks are very acidic. So we need to counteract those acid drinks, because otherwise you can erode and you can wear out the tissues. So we design new materials to be able to neutralize those acids and prevent failure. As you can see there, I'm showing a failure of a tooth that was, you can see the crack, how the crack initiates and propagates. So the new generation of materials have the potential to prevent this acid degradation of the materials and prevent the failure of tooth. So you can have, when you're 60 and 70 years old, you still have your teeth up and running without cracks, and everything is restored. So that's kind of my big time of the day is being spent on designing new materials that can last longer and prevent cavities, that kind of stuff. Okay, let's continue. So what is my day-to-day life, right? So I kind of broke it down in 3 sections. Santiago is a faculty member, Santiago is a scientist, and Santiago is a person as well. So as a faculty, I have to prepare classes, I have to teach classes. And in fall, for example, I have 140 students to teach dental materials. I help students to learn their content, and I also help the school to run, right? I need to do all the tasks that we need to do to be able to run the show. As a scientist, I have to lead and inspire and motivate students. Under me, I have like 3 to 4 students right now, and they all are eager to learn, eager to be the next generation of scientists. So I'm in charge to, just direct them, give them feedback, and be there for them. Okay, I need to also write papers. Research is great, but if you don't write it and you don't show it to the media, is worthless, right? You need to show the results to the community. I also need to request for money. I need to talk to NIH, NSF, my school, and different institutions to try to help fund my research. And as a person, I'm here to help my peers. I'm here to help my coworkers. I'm here to serve the community and save my friends. As being in these positions, I feel I'm this person that I need to use my position to help the community to be in the world to be a better place. Okay, so that's kind of myself in a day-to-day basis. And as Sarah said, I've been exposed to outreach programs. So in 2017, I guided Lilia in the REAP project. And this experience was really, really amazing. Lilia was very, very energetic. She was very smart. And when the first conversation I had with her was like, okay, Lilia, what do you want to do? And she said, I want to save the world. I want to be able to prevent oil spills. And after several interactions with her, we decided we wanted to do oil filtration membranes. And we came up with this idea of creating new filters. So if you have an oil spill, just put the filter in and be able to repel and kind of hold the oil. And we did it. We fabricated and we tested them, and we showed that the filters she made were very repelling on oil and water. And I was happily surprised because this experience she had with us boosts her application process. So actually she was awarded by the North Arundel County to support her graduate school. So with that fund, she was able to go to city. So these experiences you're doing right now in high school are very important, and not only to for you to learn and keep motivated and put you aside, but also to be able to apply for funding to sponsor your career. And in 2016, we had Sean and Anna, and they also super smart and outgoing guys. We created new dental materials, and they were exposed to these lab environments, and they prepared dental materials themselves, as you can see there. And that's also Dr. Melo, which is a faculty in dental school in Maryland. So great experience, smart people, and I really encourage you to keep connected to these programs. And finally, some words of wisdom is So now that you're beginning to discover the world and science, find your passion. I think that's the most important thing you should do right now. Go listen to your heart and decipher what do you like to do. And don't let your parents, your friends, nobody tell you what to do. Just listen to your heart, because your heart knows what is the best for you. Once you know what you like to do, go and connect that with something scientifically, right? If you like computers, you like video games, okay, go to computer science. That might be your field. If you like hands-on experience, okay, you might like experiments. You might like material science engineering. So you can navigate. Once you kind of know what you want to do, you can navigate to the different options and begin to pin down the next step. Another words of wisdom is be proactive. Okay, don't be afraid to reach out to professors. As a professor and a faculty, I'm super excited with high schoolers reach me out, and they write me, "Hey Santiago, I love your topic. I want to keep in touch. I want to visit your lab." We like proactive people. So don't feel scared. Be proactive. Write them email and show interest and commit and be responsible. And that'll keep you going. Have excellent communication skills. I often find very smart people, but they are very bad communicators. And right now the world is going so fast that we need to keep very good communication skills. Just send emails, keep in touch, try to expand your network and chat. Again, try to get engaged in these outreach programs and funding opportunities. And finally, what I want to leave you guys with is do stuff and activities that are going to keep you different from your peers. When I review applications, you want to pinpoint things that this candidate is different, right? So I don't want the best one. I don't want the first one. That's not necessarily the best. I want to see students that are different. Why you're different and why the things you're doing differently can be a good fit for the programs and the things you are interested on, right? And I finalize my speech by showing you this flyer. What if you're right and they're wrong, right? There is no good and bad, but just try to do activities that put you aside. And that for sure is going to shine eventually when you try to apply for different programs. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you guys enjoyed my talk, and feel free to ask any questions.
All right, so we have several questions already.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to get back to the first two that were asked about efficiency and comparison of that flag that you were using compared to wind turbines. But I'm going to start with Marco's question, which is, what materials can conduct the piezoelectricity? And am I pronouncing that right? Piezoelectricity?
Piezo, yeah. What materials can conduct?
Yes. What materials can conduct the electricity?
To conduct electricity, you can find metals like copper or like steels. The conduction is not a problem right now. Copper is the best. It's a little bit pricey, but it's the best out there in terms of efficiency. Now, in terms of piezoelectric materials, there are actually a vast menu of piezoelectrics. We can find quartz, the watches. Sugar actually is piezoelectric. We have ceramics like barium titanate, like zinc oxide. We have polymers like PVDF. Actually, your bone, your teeth, they're also piezoelectrics. The question is, which one is the best piezoelectric material, and which one gives you more output based on the amount of stress you get? Ceramics are the ones like BTO. NASA has these patented fibers. They are called MFCs, and they're very good in terms of output. But yeah, I hope this answers your question.
Yeah. So James and Jake both asked questions that were similar regarding the benefits or the efficiency of using the flags versus wind turbines of similar size.
Yeah, so they're not comparable. Wind turbines, the difference is the amount of energy you can generate. So wind turbines, you can power a house with a wind turbine. You cannot power a house with a flag. So it's the range. With the flags, you can operate electronics, computers, cell phones, smartwatches. That's kind of the niche for these technologies. Be able to deploy these flags in random locations to power electronics. There is no way piezoelectrics can replace wind turbines or can replace hydropower. But they are very good because if you deploy them in the Antarctic, in Mars, in the moon, they're easy, lightweight, and you can power electronics. So that's kind of the big difference between those two. So I think the range of energy is totally different.
Okay, great. And Elizabeth asks, do you believe that in today's science and engineering fields, it is important to have a strong background in both science and engineering when looking into a career? And if so, what science and engineering fields do you view as most compatible?
That's a good question. Science and engineering. What to say? Yes, they're both linked and they complement each other. So I guess I'll go back to this slide. Find your passion, right? So what is your passion about? If you like more applied stuff, I want to say go more engineering side. If you like science or basic science, that's the term, basic science, go more science-wise. They're connected, right? Because basic science gives results to engineers, and the engineers apply this to more word applications. Basic science, they stay more on the basic stuff. So if you like things that are more abstract and more basic and more that not necessarily have a direct application, I'll say go for science. If you like things like seeing things applied and doing the translational research, go more for engineering. So I hope that gave you a little bit of insight, but most importantly, find your passion.
Right.
And by doing that, you can go one way or the other.
Right. Well, why don't we jump to Dr. Reinke now? And certainly if folks have follow-up questions for Dr. Orrego, please feel free to jump in. I will collect them and save them for the end, because he has generously agreed to stay online too. You may even get a question from our other speaker too. So let's jump to Dr. Emily Reinke, who is at the U.S. Army Public Health Center, and she's going to talk about her life as a biologist and toxicologist.
Hello, thank you so much for having me today. I'm very excited to talk to everyone and kind of give you a little bit of an insight into what we do for more applied toxicology in the DoD. So as I said, I'm more of an applied researcher as opposed to an actual exploratory researcher. But I guess talk a little bit about me first. So that's me. Sorry, I'm not on video today, but I am calling in from work, so it's very hard to be on a video camera. I was born and raised in northern Colorado, and I spent my entire childhood in an ice rink. You would think, being someone who was raised in Colorado, that you would be an avid skier, but I've been skiing once in my life, despite the fact that I lived about 30 minutes from a slope. But I spent all my time on frozen water, and I actually made it to be a double gold and was a national competitor on synchronized skating teams. And I actually found that having that sports experience and that individualized sports experience actually made me a very dedicated scholar. And I can actually say that has played out with a lot of the other people that I grew up with that were also competitive figure skaters. We've all gone on to do advanced degrees and have all been very, very successful. It's a great time management thing. So if you're doing sports right now, don't give those up because you want to focus on the sciences. Keep doing those and just find a way to balance it all out, because honestly, that time management skill is crucial to being able to do anything that you want to do. So halfway through high school, I actually moved to the Seattle area, and I actually graduated from Lake Washington High School, if anybody's from the Seattle area and knows what that is. But I actually spent the last 2 years of high school taking community college classes. So I actually never attended a class at that high school. I spent all my time in a community college and took all my classes there. So that also probably helped quite a bit with the focusing. As I was growing up, I did not dream that I was going to be a toxicologist. I didn't think I was going to be a biologist. I actually wanted to be an exotic animal veterinarian specializing in large cats working at a zoo. And this was my goal from the time I was about 10 all the way up until about halfway through college, when I decided that I didn't actually want to be a veterinarian anymore and I was going to go into research. So what do I actually do? Well, I'm a biologist for the Army Public Health Center Toxicology Directorate. And personally, I am married and have one child. She's just turned 2 years old. And yes, it is possible to have a family and balance a career. It's hard, but you can do it. Next slide. So where did I do all of my schooling? Again, kind of not a non-traditional route. I got my bachelor's degree at the University of St. Andrews in St. Andrews, Scotland, and it was biology with an emphasis in animal biology. And I did have a thesis project, and that was actually looking at white muscle fiber in Atlantic salmon. So I spent a lot of time, as every biologist will do in their lives, staring at a computer screen, circling something, and then measuring how big that was. It was stimulating. After I graduated with my bachelor's, I went straight to Washington State University in Pullman, Washington. So I saw we had one person from Wazoo, so go Cougs. I did my degree in animal sciences with an emphasis in nutrition. And that was actually, that focus in nutrition and selenoproteins was actually what prompted me to do my PhD. And I headed off to do my, I saw that pop up. Headed off to do my PhD at the University of Illinois at Chicago, and it was in cancer biology, carcinogenesis, and chemotherapeutics, and really mostly reactive oxygen species and antioxidant protection. So as you can see, I've had a huge gamut of what I have focused on, and I've kind of been all over the place, and it really has been great in giving me a wide perspective of understanding a lot of different things in biology instead of focusing down onto something very finite as I would if I was going to be a research biologist. Because I'm doing this applied toxicology, having that broader knowledge actually helps in a lot of the determinations that we have to do at APHC for whether or not something is going to be safe when we're telling the developers. And I'll go on and tell you a little bit more about that. Next slide. So what did I do for career and work? Well, I was a veterinary assistant throughout college. Every summer I came back to the Seattle area and worked in a veterinary clinic. And I'll be honest, that was actually kind of what prompted me to not want to be a veterinarian anymore. And so I got to the end of my bachelor's and really felt like I wanted to go into a more research-based field. So during my graduate studies, I was a teaching assistant or a research assistant. So I had a little bit of experience teaching animal sciences while I was at WSU. And then I was entirely in the lab my entire PhD, which was fantastic because I could really focus on what I was learning how to do. I am an AEOP alum. So yay, go AEOP people. I have a SMART Scholarship. I was from the 2011 cohort. And if you don't know what the SMART Scholarship is, the acronym is up there. It is an amazing program to look into. If you want to either have your bachelor's paid for or even your graduate degree paid for, it's a very generous scholarship. And without it, I would not have been able to do a lot of the research that I wanted to do during my PhD, because instead of my advisor having to pay for my stipend, he was able to put that money in towards funding my actual undergrad research or my graduate research. And just as kind of an aside, as SMART scholars, Army Public Health Center is actually very active in the SMART program. We have, in the toxicology directorate alone, myself and one incoming SMART student who will be here in a couple of weeks to start her actual career here. And then we have another one who is in his last year of grad school and will be starting next year. And then throughout the whole center, we actually have, I don't know, about 10 or 12 different SMART scholars who have all been very successful coming out of that program. So I joined the U.S. Army Public Health Center in 2013. So I came straight in from my PhD. I didn't do a postdoctoral position anywhere. I actually had people here at PHC who functioned as my postdoctoral advisors and made sure my first 2 years here felt very much like a postdoc experience. So what do we do here? We conduct toxicology studies to fill in data gaps for Army relevant compounds and formulations. So that could be a main focus of what we do is actually doing the toxicity testing on what are considered green insensitive munitions. So these are things not like TNT or RDX, which can have some severe health and environmental consequences over long-term exposures or even short-term exposures. These are munitions and energetics that have lower toxicity, are less invasive into the environment, and actually don't explode unless you really want them to. So you don't get those sympathetic reactions in a depot where maybe something accidentally goes off and then the entire depot blows up. You only have that one isolated explosion. And so it's basically, we're helping the people who are developing chemicals that still go boom in the way that we want them to go boom, but are not going to be toxic to the soldiers who are using them on a regular basis, and they're not going to be environmental contaminants on the training areas, because we want to make sure that our soldiers are using the same things that they're going to be using in the field. Additionally, I do mostly, when you think of toxicology, it's mostly animal studies that people think of. I'm actually an in vitro alternative subject matter expert, and my other role, hat, whatever you want to call it, that I do is I'm the co-chair of the Interagency Coordinating Committee for the Validation of Alternative Methods, short order ICFAM. And so what that is it's actually 16 federal agencies sit together on a committee, and we figure out how we can move toxicology testing away from animals using the 3 R's, so reduction, refinement, and replacement, and eventually move everything into more in silico and in vitro systems, so that we're not using as many animals, but we're still getting robust data that gives us all the information that we would need to know if something's safe or not. Next slide. So research interests over the years, I briefly have mentioned this, chemotherapeutics and adjuvant therapies, as you saw from my PhD thesis title, which I didn't actually read. We were looking at the use of nutraceuticals as adjuvants. So in chronic myelogenous leukemia, imatinib is the first round drug that's used in treatment of that. And a lot of people actually can develop resistance to this. It's an antibody therapy, and so over time, they'll get a mutation in their disease, which makes them resistant to that drug. So the initial idea on my thesis project was that we could use something like selenium, which is an antioxidant micronutrient, that could help protect against that DNA damage that happens from the selection pressure with the imatinib, and so hopefully prolong the time to resistance so that you're not having to go into these second generation, third generation drugs quite as quickly. And that actually kind of morphed more into how antioxidant proteins are translated and the regulation of those, especially this selenium-specific selenium proteins. And then also toxicology and future alternatives, that kind of plays in with my ICFAM role, using the 3 R's, as I mentioned, reduce, refine, replace. And, what non-animal tests, whether that be computer models or cell-based models, can provide better and more comprehensive data for toxicity assessments. And so the end goal of all of this is that we will no longer need to put something in a rat or a rabbit or a mouse, that we would be able to do everything based on computer modeling and then a comprehensive set of cell-based or tissue-based testing. And then how do we go about validating these alternative methods to make sure that they meet all of our criteria, and how can this be applied to risk assessment? I do some work with our risk assessors over here in helping them understand what toxicology data actually means, so that they can look at exposure scenarios and know if this is something that's going to be a problem or not. Next slide. So where do we get our funding from? Dr. Orrego mentioned that he has to go for NIH, NSF grants. You would think DoD would be entirely internally funded, and well, that's mostly true. We do get grants from several other DoD sources, but we can also apply for outside funding. There are a few institutes around here that I work with that actually have NIH grants and are able to do their funding through that. It's not the normal NIH funding scale. It's maybe through some of the other areas where NIH is focused, but they are getting their grants through that. We have, because APHC is very customer focused, we do serve our customers. And so we'll have somebody come to us and say, we have this new material, can you please do the testing for us? And so then they'll provide us the funding for that. And then we also have what's known as central funding. And so that money is actually what's being given to us by our command. So Army Public Health Center is part of the medical command. And so MedCom will then give us some amount of funding to kind of keep the lights on and give the, provide for the equipment and things that we would need in order to do our testing. So I'm able to do a little bit of quote unquote fun, not research, but fun development of methods through some outside funding that I get through the chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear groups. And so that CBURN funding helps to fund some of the other things that I do enjoy doing. Next slide. Can't remember next. So what was my inspiration to be in STEM? And I have a feeling this is something that's very common with a lot of different fields within STEM. A need to explore, what you want to find the answer to something. And yeah, I do applied research or applied testing now, and really it's, you do the test, you get your answer, and then you analyze what that answer actually means. But it's still exploration. It's still helping somebody somewhere make a definite, defines that there's a problem or not with what they're working on. It can be peaceful. And I know Sarah laughed at this a little bit when she saw the slide, but I actually find tissue culture extremely relaxing. And so when I'm having a really stressful day, I do have to do a lot of paperwork, and I just can't handle the paperwork. It's, oh, hey, my cells need to go be passaged. And so I'll go out and sit in the hood and take care of my cells for an hour and feel much better. It can be extremely aggravating. Troubleshooting is, it's fun, but it also can really start to get to you, especially when it's, it's supposed to be working. I'm doing everything right. It's not working. So, I don't know. And then I really had a drive to help people or animals. I wanted to be a veterinarian, but it really, the thing that's great about working for the Army Public Health Center is that I know that I'm having a direct impact in the health and safety of our warfighters and in the people who work with them. So civilians like me, their families, the people who live around the bases. I know that everything that I do every day has a direct impact in protecting them, because I'm the person very early on who's saying, no, you shouldn't be using this because of these reasons. And, usually our chemical developers are very willing to listen to that. So next slide.
Great.
Or is that it?
I can't remember. Oh, no, you still have more.
Yep. Sorry, I couldn't remember. Tips for your future, explore your field early. If it's something that you think you're going to be really passionate about, get into it in high school. Get, as early as you can, just so that you really know if it's something that you want to do. One thing that I learned by having done my bachelor's in St. Andrews, you don't do a lot of those non-degree specific classes. I'm blanking on the name of them right now. Like, as somebody who was in biology, I only took 2 classes outside of the biology department for that entire 4 years. So you really had to know when you were going into that bachelor's degree that that's really what you wanted to do, because you didn't have a whole lot of room to move once you started. So really start exploring early. As Dr. Orrego said, like, reach out in high school. I'm a JSHS judge, so I don't know if anybody's seen me at JSHS in the past that's participated, but that's the thing you need to be doing. Get out there and just explore, ask questions, never be afraid to ask somebody there. I love getting email from people asking me questions. I love it when there's somebody at JSHS who, had a question. Obviously at JSHS, they can't ask me directly as a judge, but they can contact me afterwards. And I love getting those because I love helping people. Honestly, don't be afraid to change. If you start doing something and you're like, this isn't the right fit, go the other way if you really need to. There's nothing wrong with changing your mind if you know it's not going to be the right fit, and take chances, because you might find something that you're extremely passionate about and not even realize it until you've actually tried it.
Great.
I think that's
That is it. I will just double check. I'm writing down a question for you. So we do have questions.
okay.
So I do have a question. I know that a lot of our apprentices this summer are not in biology labs and may not know what in vitro alternative subject matters are. You know, unlike me, who've spent some time in a hood like you have, although I had cells that were pretty sticky, so I got to bang them around a little bit and get some frustrations out. But could you explain what that might look like? Are you working with plates? Are you working with?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess if you think about, I hate using the forensic show example, but if you think about the forensic shows and what they have out there, and you know, they have that. It's a UV light with a gel and a bunch of bands on it. That could be something I was doing. You know, maybe I'm looking for protein expression. I'm looking at that. Working in vitro cells, it's all plate based. So you have those little circular petri like dishes, and that's where your cells are growing. And you're working entirely. The fun thing with this, I say fun in a very sarcastic manner, is you're working in an aqueous system. And a lot of the materials we work with are not soluble. So how do you handle something that is extremely volatile? How do you handle something that's non-soluble in an aqueous system? Because if you can't get it to go into solution, you're not going to be able to actually test with it very well. So it as an in vitro alternative, looking at validation side of things, it's very, sorry, brain just went about a mile a minute ahead of me. You know, you have all these other questions you have to answer that you don't really have when you think about like an animal model. So it's almost all plate based. It might be a lot of robotics. So instead of me sitting there and pipetting something out, it might actually be a robot that's doing that with these whatever cell line you're using. And again, we have immortalized cell lines or even primary cell lines for pretty much every tissue that you can get. And so you can do testing on everything. It's just because it's not done as a whole body exposure, you might be missing some of the metabolism. You might be missing some of the things that are going to happen if it's in the blood and then goes into a different organ. And so it's this big black box of how do we actually make an animal on a plate or a human on a plate?
Right. Because biology is complex systems. And we do have someone who has come in with an exclamation point of bio. Yay, bio.
Bio's great.
Yes, bio is great. There is a question about balancing being an athlete with being a scientist. And I've lost who asked the question. It was Justin who asked the question. Do you think it would be more beneficial to have a high GPA and no competitive sports, or a slightly lower GPA with a competitive sport?
Ooh, that's a tough question because I mean, and this is where I have a hard, like, because I went to a school system for my bachelor's that has a very different admissions process than U.S. schools. I can't necessarily answer this 100% well, but I would say those extracurricular activities are very important to universities. You know, they're not going to want to see that you had maybe a 2.5 and did sports. So if you can obviously keep that 3 and above, I would say that they want to see that you're well balanced, that you can handle different things in your life as opposed to just being academically driven. Now, if you are very well rounded in an academic way and you're doing a lot of different things academically and you're taking all AP classes or all college level classes, I think that's going to be a different answer than if you're not. So I think it's really just more that extracurricular showing that you do other things, but don't overbook yourself either. You know, it's maybe 1 or 2 extracurriculars instead of 10. Mm-hmm. So again, it's that finding that balance.
Right. And
probably Justin.
I do have a question for both you and Dr. Orrego, and I'm going to turn on his camera again if he is still on camera. There he is. Hello.
I'm here.
So you both talked specifically about your fields. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you're working with interdisciplinary teams, because from how you've described your research, pretty certain that you're working with chemists, other engineers, other professionals in different disciplines that are contributing to what you're doing. So could you explain a little bit about that?
Dr.
Emily, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say you can go first.
Go ahead. I'll go after you.
So let me recap the question to make sure I got it right. So how do we interact interdisciplinarily is basically the grand scheme.
Right.
So we basically, it's communication. It's making sure that you're talking to everybody, and it's still something I'm learning on a daily basis. Like, who do I need to talk to? Who do I need to be involved in a project to make sure that what I'm trying to focus on is getting the right answer? So I'm not sure I'm going to answer this question.
Well, sometimes does it mean that you're working with a physician or a specialist with liver or something like that?
So I work in my field. I'm working with regulators, so people at the FDA and the EPA, so people who make decisions about whether not something like if a drug is safe. I'm working with risk assessors. I'm working with other biologists, toxicologists. Pretty much not necessarily physicians per se, but it's more just everybody that could be involved in the realm of toxicology. And that's the people who, again, from the chemists, I'm talking with chemists on a regular basis, the people who actually run the programs. So the acquisition process in the DoD is extremely convoluted. And you have somebody with each of these acquisition programs, they're called a program manager. And so they're the people who are sitting over here going like, this is a worthwhile project, this is not a worthwhile project. And so they're the ones who are giving the money to the people who are developing the chemicals, and the chemists are the ones who are then making sure that we're doing the toxicology testing, and then we're feeding back to them, and then they're feeding back to the program manager. And so you're talking with people from a whole wide gamut, someone who maybe doesn't have any scientific background at all the way down to, maybe there's a research toxicologist over at the Air Force that I'm talking with who's developing a new method. So it's for me, it's everybody.
Same here. So for example, in academia, actually everything is interconnected. Right now, you cannot do science if you don't have multiple departments, multiple fields engaged in working between them. For instance, in Hopkins, we had a project to design conduits, hard conduits. So you need like two teams. You need the doctors, medical doctors, because they know very good all the physiology about the heart, the sizes, the blood flow, so on and so forth. And from the engineering perspective, you need the materials people. You need, which polymer is best, which polymer expands, which one is biocompatible, right? So when you unify, when you intersect these two fields, that's when big things happen, right? If I'm isolated and I'm only an engineer doing polymer science, I cannot have the grounding and the application because I don't have that sensitive, and I don't know what they need specifically. And the examples are infinite, right? Right now here in Temple, I work with dentists, right? So they tell me what they need, and I can provide them the materials perspective. They provide me the clinical need. And that's how we do translational research. So that's how science and research and academia is actually structured. If we don't have this interdisciplinary connection, then I guess the outcome is going to be very, very poor.
Right. And what about folks with different backgrounds? Not all engineers have a PhD. So how would they work with a team in either one of your situations? And for Dr. Reinke, non-PhD biologists, perhaps.
So we matrix very well with our masters, our bachelors, our PhDs, our non-degree. Everybody has their role, and while the PhDs may be the ones who are writing all of the reports wouldn't get written if we didn't have our technicians. So, and again, I'll say we have all the way from people who finished high school and they have been working with animals doing toxicology testing since they got out of high school, all the way up to, people who are 20, 30 years outside of their PhD. And those reports, those papers, because we do also try to publish peer-reviewed papers, none of that would get done if we didn't have the input or the help and assistance of the people who can actually be in the lab every single day doing the repetitive things that just when you're a paper, I do a lot of paperwork, so I don't have the time to be in lab for 6-7 hours a day, but that's their role. And so we would not be able to do anything without them. And we actually have several PIs who are master's level, and they've been in the field for so long that I still go to them and say, hey, can you help me with this? I'm not sure what's going on. And so, pretty much we need everybody to do our job. We need everybody.
Right.
Exactly. A quick example is, for example, when you publish, you need figures, and who's the best doing figures, right? Art people. So we need technical drawing and art people to make good figures, and we use those figures to make good publications. So it's not necessarily within scientific collaboration, but between fields as well. Mm-hmm. And the examples are limitless at the same time. We find in different times of the day or activities, we need from other branches to be able to nurture our work. Mm-hmm.
That's bringing the A into STEM, right? The STEM to STEAM is that come in. We have Jake asking, what degree is sufficient to be a technician?
I would honestly say there's associate's degrees in that at this point. So it's starting to get the experience. Again, we have people who are high school level that are technicians. So it's a matter of getting your foot in the door. We take ORISE interns here. So that's for the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. And so if you're in school or within 5 years of having finished a degree, you can come in and you can work as an ORISE intern, and that kind of gets the experience that you would need in order to be a technician. And we have several of our ORISEs who are bachelor's or high school level that are in doing a lot of the technician work. So, I mean, and really it can be high school or bachelor's or associates.
So another question from Bella, what advice would you give to someone who is still undecided on a career? And she also has a question, maybe I'll send that to Dr. Orrego and then have Dr. Reinke come in, because her follow-up question is, what's the SMART scholarship process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to find your path, your passion, as I said in the presentation, ask your heart. I think that's the source you need to ask for. Then in the real world, or in what you can do, reach out to people in different fields and ask for different experiences, so you can explore, right? So you can go and volunteer in a lab for 3 months, 6 months, and get the experience. Test for the topic. Do you like material? Do you like biology? Do you like environmental? So you can get a more direct sense of what is the work like. Not necessarily that experience will talk about the field, but it definitely will give you a good taste. So I want to say, first, try to narrow down the topics and the areas and the fields by searching in your heart. Then once you have that narrowed down, just reach out to labs, to professors, to school programs, community, and try to get a more rich sense of that specific field. And it's very natural, and it's okay to try different stuff. Actually, when you join a PhD program, for instance, you're asked to volunteer in different labs. And after 1 or 2 years of doing that, you need to pick your lab. So that's completely normal. Exploring different options is the natural way to go. But I'll recommend doing a search within you and narrow down, to 3 to 5 fields. And after that, you can begin and be more specific about it.
I completely agree with that. For the follow-up for the house selection process for the SMART scholarship, it was actually fairly straightforward. I believe the timing is still similar as to when I applied, 2010, 2011. put in your application in December, and the biggest piece of advice I can say with that SMART scholarship is make sure your application is complete. Because the first round of eliminations that happens is literally them just going through and going, yeah, this application is not complete. Don't it. And so the year I applied, I think there were 1,200 people that applied, and the cut was down to about 800, 700 or 800 after the first cut, just because of incomplete applications. And that was things like transcripts not getting in on time, or your letters of recommendation not being complete, or forgetting something on the application. So just that first thing is super easy. The biggest thing with the SMART scholarship is actually looking at what facilities are participating and really trying to narrow down where you want to go. So in the field of biology, there's really not that many labs who are taking SMART scholars. And so you really have to say, is that something that I'm going to want to spend the next 2 to 5 years after my degree doing? Is it something that I'm going to be interested in? And then so you can put in what facilities you'd be interested in going to, and then just accept that you're not necessarily going to get your number one. So, you know, once they do that first elimination, then the applications go out to various people throughout the DoD, and they look through and they go, yeah, this is a good application, I want to put it through. And so based on the criteria for whatever that facility is, they'll rank everything. And then there will be a round of phone interviews to kind of see, you know, if you're going to be fit for that facility. And then every facility puts in, I want this person, I want this person, I want this person. And then the SMART program itself says, okay, we're going to match people up based on what we think is best from all the comments we've gotten in and, you know, applications.
Great.
I want to add something there, if possible. So keep in mind, guys, that when you apply to these programs, you're going to be competing with, 100 other students, right? So how to get it, how to get the award. So when I was fortunate, Victor invited me to be part of the review program for REAP, and we received like plus 80 applications. So us as judges, how can we choose the winners, right? And it's not necessarily ruled by GPA, because if you're gonna filter by GPA, just put in a computer, let you know the 10 first and done, right? But it's not like that. So this is my point. Just try to do activities, try to do things that is gonna put you aside from the people. That when you write your application, you want to show the judges that, hey, I'm different, I do this, I like to do this, show your passion, show that you're a grounded person and you're doing something different towards that goal. And that's what we want to read. We want to promote people that is engaged and they know where they want to go, and we're just there to give a bump to join this program. So that's why I kind of encourage you guys, do something different that keeps you aside. Not to be the first, but something that shows your passion and where do you want to go.
The other thing I will add on to that, your letters of recommendation. Make sure the person who is writing your letter or the people who are writing your letters are actually going to write really, really good letters of recommendation. Don't go to someone who, you kind of sort of know, but doesn't really know a lot about you and have them write it. You want someone who's really going to boost you up and write a really good letter for you. One of my colleagues is a judge on the SMART scholarship, and she said, you can tell when there's somebody who's writing a letter because they've been kind of coerced into it versus someone who's really passionate about boosting the person they're writing the letter for. So really think hard about who's writing those letters of recommendation and make sure that it's the best people for you to boost you up.
And hang on to them because they're great to read afterward, right? Too.
If you get them. I don't know. There's some that I never saw.
Right. Well, I do want to wrap up the hour since we're a little over 2:00, and thank both of you. It's been an amazing session to hear how you have combined your passions outside the lab with what you do inside the lab, and encourage all of us to be well-rounded and to think creatively, and to also ask your heart. I love that question. Ask your heart. So before we go, I just wanted to follow up with a couple of things to remind all of you to check out the Army Educational Outreach Program website. You're all apprentices now, but you may be interested in other programs. The website has more information about that SMART program that we talked about, and the ORISE program. I will definitely get links from Dr. Reinke about that so that we can send those out to you. Also, if you're doing some research that your principal investigator, your mentors may be taking to a professional conference this year, and you would be able to present. It's a pretty special thing for a high school student or an undergrad to be able to do that at a professional symposium. But if you have that opportunity, AEOP has travel awards. And I know that there's some people who are doing some unique research this summer and want to make sure that you take advantage of that should it present itself. Also, Dr. Reinke had mentioned the Junior Science and Humanities Symposium. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. We're scheduling an August webinar to give all of you the opportunity to find out a little bit more about that and what it would take to convert the research that you've done this summer as an apprentice and convert that into a presentation for JSHS. And for some of you, it may just be a different kind of write-up. For others, it may be taking that question that you started this summer, taking it forward, or applying some of the techniques that you learned. Also encourage you to check out the DoD STEM website. Pretty easy, DoD STEM is all you have to search for. And that gives you opportunities across all of the services. A lot of folks may be in services for the Navy and Air Force as well, and there's definitely opportunities to take advantage of there. Also wanted to remind you, we're posting all of our webinar recordings on our YouTube channel. And I saw some familiar names today. I think you were on some other sessions. And for those of you who may be new or coming back to us after the first session, definitely check this out. We do have the third session up. It posted this morning, and hope to have this fourth session up by the end of the day too. And feel free to share these. Definitely resources. If you know someone who might be interested in a STEM career, let them know that this is something that they can check out too. Letting you know, August, we are going to have an additional webinar. We are rescheduling a computer scientist who we had originally planned for July. He's coming back, and we are pairing him up with someone from probably Army Research Lab West is we're trying to get a speaker for. And I think our speakers today definitely shared with you to ask your heart, keep learning and keep making connections through this experience. A fabulous piece of advice that I got at one point was, when you are asking someone if they have the time to talk to you, to remember that that person who you're asking isn't nervous. And neither should you, because they have taken the time out of their day to talk to you. They're interested in learning about what speaks to you, what you want to learn about. And everybody, no matter the field, really wants to make sure that the folks who follow us have a good understanding and help you find your passion too. So please stay in touch with us. I know some people are wrapping up their summers. And if you have anything on social media, please tag us so we can find you, and definitely let us know what you're doing next. So with that, I will wrap up today's session. And again, thank our speakers and thank everyone for joining us. We're getting a lot of thank yous in the chat. Thanks so much for spending your afternoon with us.